Wednesday, and welcome to Trades Lady Happy Hour, your weekly installment of Instagram Live, where you get to meet another awesome tradeswoman, hang out with us for an hour, hear about her journey, her story, struggles and wins, accomplishments, all of that good stuff. Welcome if you're new here. Welcome to Trades Lady Happy Hour. We're really happy to have you here. If you've not seen this before or know what we're doing here, this is a weekly hour that we take time out to shine a light on all of the amazing women out there who are kicking butt in the trades, in automotive trades and kind of periphery trades, similar, whether it's diesel techs, airplane mechanics, body techs, paint techs, restoration techs, you name it, all sorts of women just killing it out in the field. They are by far the minority out there, and we tend not to get a whole lot of credit or recognition, so this hour is about them. And for the last 95 some odd weeks, I've been featuring different incredible women. You can always go back and check all of the past episodes on my IGTV tab. There's a number of just absolutely incredible women there. Their stories, their inspiration, their insight has been hugely humbling and motivating and inspiring to me, and I've heard from many of you who've been tuning in that it is the same for you as well. So thank you for tuning in and joining, and for everybody who has been coming back all of these weeks, thank you for your constant support and coming and spending some time with me on a Wednesday evening. This has become a fun tradition, and I'm glad that you guys are here with me every week, so thank you. I want to thank my sponsor, Drive Time, for being a partner in this, really more than a sponsor, for them recognizing that women in the trades need to be supported more and need their stories heard more so that we can increase the numbers of women in the trades. So I want to thank them for their support of this, and we hope to continue doing this for a long time to come. So without further ado, let's get to talking about this week's host. I'm the host. This week's guest. I swear I may be drinking bourbon out of a very tall glass, but I swear that's how tall it was when I poured it. I did not fill this all the way. I just want to promise you that. I'm staying at an Airbnb, and so I'm limited in what I have to drink from. I promise. I'm the host. We've got a great guest. So this week we get to meet Meredith Anderson. Meredith, I am super excited to meet her, and I've got to say she's not very active on Instagram, or not really active at all, but she's agreed to come on and do a live with me anyway. She is a diesel marine technician. She's an engineer. She's a teacher. The list of things that she does just keeps going. Like, as I learned more about her, I'm like, wait, and you what? And you what? And you do that too? Like, she does a ton of really cool stuff. I'm really excited to talk to her and hear her story, and hopefully you guys will all enjoy it as well. I'm going to see if she has joined in to the room yet, because she is not very active on Instagram. This may be her first Instagram live, so hopefully this will work properly.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I'm trying to figure out. You can hear me, right?
Hi.
Okay. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
So I'm gonna set you up
Maybe.
so I can actually talk to you. There we go.
That would be good. You're a little pixelated. I don't know if that's just on my
It
note.
may be on my end. I'm on the boat, and the internet is really sad on the boat. So, if it like freezes,
Fair enough.
I think I've got 5G, but who knows?
Okay. Who knows? Well, we're gonna get through it one way or another, even if we're pixelated. We can still hear your voice, and that's what really matters. Because I want to hear all about what you're doing and all of this craziness that you're up to. So just let me know if we lose connection at any point and you can't hear me or whatever.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll probably just add a comment or something if I were to lose you or something.
There you go. Well, thank you for agreeing to join me. Welcome. It's really fantastic to meet you. I've been so
I'm really
excited
excited
about
to meet you
this.
too. I've heard a lot, and it's been really fun, kind of following along and seeing everything that's going on. So, yay! Thank you.
Absolutely. So we've got to fill everybody in for a quick second.
I
You're on a
am.
boat right now. You
Yeah,
live on a
this is
boat?
a 30-foot like Catalina. She's kind of she's in construction mode because I'm refitting it right now at the moment. But I've been on a boat for about 4 years, and it is, if
Wow.
you haven't thought of like, an alternative lifestyle, my parents definitely are very classic. You grow up, you get married, you buy a house, and that's success. And so they were
Okay.
like, you can't afford a boat. And believe it or not, it was a much cheaper alternative. Well, now I don't know how cheaper it is because, the refit, but, like rent, at least mortgage is significantly cheaper than my studio apartment. And, I'm able to put my money
Wow.
elsewhere, like my business or whatever. And that's worthwhile for me.
Absolutely. So parents weren't too
No,
excited about the living on the boat thing?
I remember my dad getting really upset and actually being, like, you're broke. How are you going to afford a boat? And I'm like, well, I literally went to school for this and I understand the costs. I know it's going to be expensive, but I can do a lot of the labor myself, so I don't have to pay somebody. And that, if you're willing to get your hands dirty, you will save a lot of money. And it really isn't, yeah, it's expensive because I upgrade things, but mortgage wise, it's not. It's less than 500 a month. So to be here.
Wow. Do you stay docked or, I mean, or are you just out?
So
How does this work?
yeah, like I have a permanent slip where I keep the boat, store the boat. I pay for electricity, which is way more expensive than land for some reason. Um, I get free water, but they charge you like a utility fee. And then whenever I want to up and leave, I can leave. So, like last weekend, I took the boat out to an anchorage and hung out with friends. And, like this summer, I'm going to leave hopefully for a month, but that never happens. I always like try. And then my phone's usually blowing up that I just, I'm like, okay, it's time to like turn around. But yeah, I could sail it around the world if I wanted to. And some people choose to. It's the same kind of like thing as van lifing. It's just on the water.
Right. Fair enough. And
I'm
where
in
are you
Olympia,
based?
Washington. So Puget Sound area,
Okay.
which is a really
Okay.
wonderful, like near
Beautiful.
coastal area. Um, and
Yeah.
I've been on the ocean on the big ships. I'm not going to take my 30-foot sailboat. You can totally do it, but I don't want to take my house on the ocean right now.
I don't blame you. We're just getting to know you. We want to keep you around for a little while. It sounds like you're doing really awesome
People
stuff.
tend to
So,
want,
like, let's not
their
risk
engines
that.
to stay running, so I can't disappear yet. Someday.
Yeah, good. Good. So, all right. So you own your own business, which is why you can't get away for long periods of time. Tell me about this business that you own. I want to go back in time and like hear about how you got your start, but tell me
So
about the
my
business that you
business
have.
is Meredith Marine Engineering Services, and I'm a licensed marine engineer who does a mix of like commercial stuff and recreational stuff. So like my boat, my sailboat is a recreational sailboat. That's primarily what I work on is sailboats and powerboats. I only do diesel. I'm very specialized, so I do
Nice.
like electrical and diesel, but I won't touch like the reverse gear or the transmission, stuff like that. And everybody kind of in this industry has, some people want to try to be umbrella mechanics and fix everything from like the plumbing, but I've noticed that, like when you try to do everything, you're not good at any one thing. Um, and it's very different. Like, I started kind of the classic route, the automotive industry, and kind of when I came into the recreational boating industry, there's not that many standards in terms of like what it takes to be a real mechanic. So you could literally walk out on the dock and be like, well, I know how to change oil, and call yourself a mechanic, and that's it. You know, nobody will check until.
I mean, I feel like it's that way with cars too.
Oh
You're
yeah,
saying it's even
yeah, and I
looser with
encourage
boats?
people, I say seriously, ask for insurance, ask for, certification. I got a binder of that stuff that I worked for. I'm a legit mechanic who went to school for this stuff. Whereas some people, they just call it, it's a very loose term lately, and people get into trouble with that. So I worked for a few boat yards, and they were very crooked. They also had no mechanics. There was just parts people who would like slap on parts. So like if it was something obvious
Oh
like the
wow.
alternator or something, like, or if they were told, oh, you need to go change an alternator or belt or something, they could go do that. But like God forbid, like a head gasket or something would go, they don't know how to actually diagnose that or do anything beyond the outside stuff. Um,
Interesting.
and when they would try it, they would screw it up because they didn't know. And so they hired me, and they're like, oh my gosh, we have a real mechanic. And I'm like, well, what the hell have you been doing prior to me? You've been in business for like, I don't know how many years. Who is doing, like, most boats out here are diesel, so like there's certain things that you should never let a non-diesel mechanic touch, and yet they're touching them. And so, I came from the commercial industry, which is very, very standardized. And you have to be a licensed engineer to even set foot in the engine room. So, like, I was expecting that you had to have some sort of certification to like get started, and you don't. So,
What made you
my
leave the
health,
commercial side?
I'm diabetic, and the Coast Guard's really, really feisty about type 1 diabetes and seizures. And so like I still hold my license and stuff, but I can't ship out on the ocean, not on a big ship. And so that's kind of what led to the transition. And it's like, well, what the hell do I do now? I just, spent 4 years at a maritime school that now I don't, so this is sort of a way to use my license, but it's definitely not required for what I do now. Now it's pretty much just like paper on the wall. So, it was good that I
Interesting.
went through it. I learned a lot. I'm obsessed with it. I still volunteer on like different ships. So it's very useful, but it's not required for what I do.
Yeah. Interesting. So there was licensing
Yeah, so if
requirements
you wanted to go work on a
and
large like container ship or a tugboat or, some commercial vessel, you have to be licensed in some capacity or have endorsements. And so, like the captain, you get a captain's license or a mate's license that's issued by the United States Coast Guard. Same for the engineering crew.
okay.
So the engine room, you obviously have your chief engineer, and then you'll usually on a big enough boat, you'll have a first, second, and third engineer. They're all licensed, they're all engineering officers, and then you'll have unlicensed rates like QMEDs, which are qualified members of the engineering department, and wipers, which come from a very old term back in like the locomotive days. These guys literally just cleaned the engine as it ran. Um, and you'd take
Oh,
a bucket of diesel and you'd wipe the engine down and keep it clean, and that's where that term came from. And that's very much true on the big boats where the
interesting.
engines are like bigger than my boat. Like, yeah, you walk around it and you clean it up.
Right.
Anywhere you see a leak, you're cleaning. And so my school, I went to Massachusetts Maritime Academy, where you come out with your third assistant engineering license. And then from there, you have to have a certain amount of sea time, and then, take however many tests there were. There were a lot of tests. I think it was like 11 or 12 tests through the Coast Guard to get your license as an engineer. So,
Interesting. I mean, at least that, I mean, obviously we want that licensing on that side of things. Like we want that to exist. Like, I mean, at least that exists on some level. I feel like the automotive side, like, doesn't have any licensing anywhere,
I
like
mean,
on
there's
any level.
ASEs, but
But you're
yeah, I
seeing the
mean, I
contrast
took a few
between the
ASEs
two.
just for like shits and giggles, and you know, if you're good at
Yeah,
studying and you know how to take the test, like great, but that doesn't mean you should go out and be changing people's brakes, you know. So I kind of wish there was a requirement. I don't know about Europe, but I've heard that like Europe has like actual requirements to work at an auto shop, and we seem to be really you know, it's good, I guess, if you haven't had something you're willing to learn, but you know, like it's not so good if you think you know it
right.
all, and you know, now you're now you're expected to fix this stuff. Um,
No, I'm with you. I mean, we see it. I mean, what you're saying, we see on the automotive side too, right? It's like anybody can raise their hand and call themselves a mechanic without any qualifications, without any certifications. You know, as joke, my mom could hang a shingle tomorrow and call herself a
mhm.
mechanic, and nobody wants that. Um, it, and we spoke with an RV technician about a year ago, and she said zero certifications, zero anything. We've got houses on
Wow.
wheels driving around, right? Um, and yeah, you're right. In Canada and in Europe, they have much more kind of structured licensing programs to go through. I feel like we're kind of slacking
Yeah,
here
I
in the
mean, it's
U.S.
great to
on
learn
that,
on the
but
job. You know, that's kind of how I was able to like wiggle my way
totally
in, at least into the automotive and truck industry, because I didn't go to like Bates. And marine engineering has nothing to do with semi trucks. And so it was really good in that sense where I could join and they're like, okay, you know how an engine works. Cool. We're still going to start you on oil changes and move you up from there. And I was able to like learn on the job. And so that's cool because I didn't want to go to like Bates to go get some certificate that says I know how a diesel works when I know how a diesel works. But you
right,
know, my license doesn't translate to the highway industry, you know, like so
right,
you know, that's where it's kind of good where you can kind of sneak in like that. As long as you're willing to like learn, you know, okay, it's a new form of the
right.
trade. It obviously has nothing to do with what I've been doing, but as long as I'm willing to learn and like try to do it right, then cool, you know. But then it would be nice, like after you've been involved in the industry, you know, can I earn like a certificate after working in the industry for a period of time that says, yes, you actually have met
Right.
at least some baseline standards, you know.
Yeah. Do you struggle in your business with differentiating yourself from those that don't have experience or credentials? And how do you differentiate yourself? Right, I think it's a struggle
Um,
a lot of people
I
deal with.
I don't
Go ahead.
actually. For one, there's hardly any female diesel mechanics. And word
Fair.
spreads like wildfire. Once like the biggest one for one is answering the phone and calling people back. Um, doing a good job and being
Which
I
sounds
mean,
like common
it really
sense,
does,
but
but like
apparently,
if you were to come to Olympia and call any of the mechanics, you will not get a call back. And it's like, well, don't you want to work? You know, like, but they're busy. So, you know, like I'm not competing against anyone. I don't, you know, like I never even advertise anymore. I'm very much on Facebook because people like
that's
to
awesome.
follow you know, pictures and see what I'm doing. So Facebook is like my one. I don't even have a website, you know, but word of mouth travel. Like there's people on the East Coast who know who I am. People up in Canada. I've flown to
Wow,
Mexico. You
okay,
know, like it's crazy where if you start doing,
that's
you
awesome.
know, decent work, people remember that. And but means the minute I screw up, everybody's gonna know, you know. So like yeah,
Everybody
it's
remembers
really,
that
really
too.
good motivation. You know, like, a lot of these people have become really close over the years. And, you know, of course, they spread my name. But, you know, like, if I were to ever cross them or, you know, hurt them in any way, yeah, I'd be done. It'd be over, you know. And so,
Sure.
like I don't want to do that anyways, but even if I did want to do it, you know, like there's
Right.
no motivation to do that because it's like, well, I'm gonna struggle with my business if I'm gonna rip people off, so why would I do that? And I already,
Right. Well, you've built your business by taking care of people, so you just keep
yeah,
doing that, and you're going to
I
be
don't
fine.
really understand where that was kind of lost across any form of trade. Like you really don't, I'm not rich. And I don't want to own a giant boatyard or something like that and just be raking it in. My goal was just to pay my bills and be comfortable and not be stressed about bills and medical expenses and stuff like that. And I've gotten there. Like it's, living on a boat, it's more affordable anyway, so I could start out a little easier, but also like I'm comfortable. I actually have a savings account, which is weird. So like why do I need to rip people off? Like what is that gonna I don't want a bigger boat. I already have like one of
Right.
my dream boats. So like what do I need more money for? Like and so I always think it's
Right.
funny when I hear boatyards or shops or whatever who just I don't understand how they keep running. But they do, and like I hope you take that money with you to the grave, I guess. Like I don't understand.
I feel like there's enough legitimate work out there. Like we don't need to make stuff up because there's enough legitimate work out there. And if you establish yourself as a good name and a good shop and an honest technician, whatever it is you're working on, then the rest of it follows.
Yeah,
There's
you
no need
will
to
be
lie about
so
stuff. The
busy.
work is
I
there.
mean, so busy. Like I don't even worry about
How
advertising
long?
anymore. I mean, yeah, like just be honest, take care of people and they will take care of you, you know.
How long have you
I
been in
my
business now?
business has been up and running for 3.5, 4-ish years, I think. Yeah, so like
Okay,
not
nice.
super long, but long enough to like kind of I'm starting to get a foothold as like a real business, like people think of me. Versus like, oh, who was that girl? Like I don't know. Um,
What made you decide to start your own business versus working for someone
well,
else?
I kind of bounced around for a while, and I ended up deciding I wanted to get back in the marine industry. I was working on semi trucks down in Oregon, and
Okay.
I was really like semi
Okay.
trucks made me a much better mechanic because an engineer, yes, you're still fixing everything on the ship, but like a mechanic is very different, so I forced myself to kind of like, okay, I hate electronic engines, but I need to understand how they work and how to diagnose crap. And so I worked at a truck shop for a number of years. Well, I finally got to the point where I was like, I want to go back to the water in some capacity. And I didn't have a boat yet. I knew I wanted to live on a boat. And so I got hired by a boatyard in Anacortes, and it was very crooked. I mean, they paid for my move. I got up there and I would go look at people's like boats, and if I didn't come back with like a list of stuff, that didn't need to be done, I got yelled at, or like it was bad. And so I kind of like quit that place because I was like, yeah, I'm done here. And I had moved out of my apartment in Portland to come work at this boatyard. I was actually living at the boatyard in the paint booth, trying to save money for my first boat. Because, yeah, like,
Oh,
so
wow.
I had told my parents
Wow.
this idea, and they're like, wow, you're stupid. And I'm like, well, like, $1,500 rent, I don't really have, I need a savings account. Like, I can't put anything away unless I eliminate rent, like, and so I eliminated rent, and that actually, kind of became my goal was like, okay, I'll just, I'll do this, I'll live at the shop. And then when I left that shop, I actually moved in my car and just kind of bounced around, and the stress of rent wasn't there because I was in the car. Yeah. And so
I love
I
your
mean,
attitude. I love it. Like some people
my
will be like,
mom
I
was
was living in
like,
my car. It was awful. You're like, I was living in
well,
my car. I had no
I'm reading
stress.
Faye's comment, like on leaving Portland. Yeah, Portland for my studio, it was like almost sixteen
Yeah.
hundred dollars a month at the time, and it was ridiculous. And so, I was like,
Yeah.
how do you like get anything you want if you can't even save your money? Like And I worked at Cummins at the time, so it wasn't like I was at
Yeah.
McDonald's, you know. So it wasn't an entry level job, and so I left the boat yard and I kind of worked at a couple other boat yards, and I noticed that there was a common denominator, like, you know, across the board. They all wanted you to find stuff that wasn't there. They charged crazy amounts of money, and it wasn't worth what we were like. It, you know, I get an auto shop, like I get the hourly rates. We have tools, we have travel, we have like that. There's like a reasonable amount to charge, but this was like overboard. And then they would just exceed estimates, and the poor customer, especially if they lived on board, the poor customer, who's usually a retired couple, you know, like who can afford, you know, a small sailboat or something, they would be like taking out a loan to get their boat back because, oh, you quoted me 10 grand for this job and you came back with a bill for like 38 grand. You know, like we're talking like serious money where the average person doesn't have that. And so
Wow.
after that, I was like, this is, I don't want to be associated with this. This isn't like, I love the job, I love the work, but the shop is like raping these
Yeah.
people because, and they're the only shops around. So like they can't go anywhere else because the next shop's going to do the same thing. And,
Right.
you know, so that's when I was, you know, a lot of friends were like, you're really good at teaching, you should start your own business. And I was like, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Like, you know, one of my friends is a landscaper. She kind of talked me through how to do invoices and what the hell sales tax is for. You know, I paid a year's worth of sales tax out of my pocket because I didn't know labor is supposed to be taxed. You know, like learn some like lessons the hard way. And you know, like was pretty good out of the gate, just taking money out of my checks because I was terrified, you know, like of like messing up tax season, or, you know, like, oh God, I didn't put money aside or something. And so I was always good at that, but I was not, you know, it was a wake up call, and it still is. Like someday maybe I'll have an employee or
Yeah.
something, but I don't know. I don't even know where to start with an employee. So like that's
But you've made it 4 years. Like that's huge. So cheers to you for that, because that's no small feat. And I love. I mean, you're right. Like nobody goes into. Well, I guess some people do, but I feel like a lot of people go into business not really knowing what they're getting into, and we learn as we go, right? And you've
yeah.
survived on the good old fashioned stuff, hard work, and giving a damn about your
Yeah, I
customers.
wish, you know, like that was the case across the board, you know, because you can do really well just doing a good job and
Yeah.
liking what you do. So
Yeah.
I don't understand why people decide to do it the other way.
Totally. I will never understand that. We could pontificate on that one for hours on end, I'm sure, because I don't understand. But I want to go back in time a little bit. How did you get into boats in the first place? You said you started on the automotive side. What drew you to the water and to
You're
boats?
breaking up a little bit, but I heard most of it. Like, how did I get started early on?
Oh no, yeah. How did you get to boats? Where did that come from? What
Well,
drew
I
you to
was
boats?
like the automotive side started kind of when I was 4. My parents don't do anything automotive. Like we have a really sweet 51 Chevy in
Okay,
our garage, and dad has worked on it, you know, with a couple
nice.
friends, and then he's just not into cars. And I'm like, please let me work on it, and he won't let me touch it. So when I was 4, we had a family friend who was a mechanic and an engineer, and he had an old Carmen Ghia in the garage. And I remember him handing me a
Oh,
carburetor, and I had no
yes.
idea what the hell a carburetor was at the time, but I remember what it looked like and all the tiny little screws and stuff. And I was like set for life. And so later, when I was 13, another family friend who did own an auto shop, a European shop, he invited me to come down on like a Saturday, and he taught me how to do like tail lights and oil changes, and then I got really good at brakes, and I just worked under the table. I'd like come home from like middle school and do like a bunch of brakes, and they'd throw me a couple hundreds like under the table, and I thought I was rich. Yeah, it was
What?
awesome. And
I
and
love it.
the it was a husband and wife who like ran the company. And then their son was in a program called Sea Scouts, which is kind of like Boy Scouts on the water with girls. At least that's how I defined it. It's
Okay.
literally a branch of the Boy Scouts of America, but instead of like a troop, you have a ship on an actual ship. So like our boat was an 80-foot wooden retired Coast Guard boat. Um, yeah, and
Interesting.
we had a full engine room with twin diesels, twin Detroit 671s, and two gen sets, and it was all telegraph operated. And the boat used to be a Coast Guard rum runner, and I was obsessed. I mean, like, it was like the first real kind of engine room that I had spent time in, and every Monday night and Saturday, like, I was down there. We were running the boat, and my goal was to be the chief engineer, and that happened. And then one day, somebody like one of the adult leaders was like, you can go to a maritime academy and like do this as a job, right? And I was like, that's a thing. Like, I had heard about like the military academies, and I tried to get into the Coast Guard Academy, but because of my diabetes, that wasn't a thing. So that's why I went to Mass Maritime. Now, granted, there were loopholes that I found later, but like I ended up like teaching at the academy, but I wasn't allowed to be a cadet at the academy. It's like, how does that make sense? But so like that's kind of how I got into it. I was part of Sea Scouts for like over 10 years, and then I came back as like an adult leader after I got, captain's license and stuff like that. And I still, participate every once in a
Love
while.
it.
They need some adult help, and like it's fun. And yeah, like
So how old are the kids? How old were you when you were doing that? How
they
old are the
are
kids you're working
14
with?
to 21. So you have to be 14 to
Okay.
join. So it's
Nice.
kind of like venturing in Boy Scouts, where you can't join as like a little kid. You do have to kind of be old enough to understand some safety stuff, because it is a real ship.
Sure. That's
But
fair.
like, and then a lot of people stay involved all through college and stuff.
That's incredible. And so you were exposed to stuff really early on. You were really young when you were exposed to stuff, and you just took to it immediately. The carburetor story, that's amazing to me. Also, yay for Volkswagens being the gateway drug into
Yep.
into
Yep.
this work.
Yeah, my family friend, his name is Cornell, and he was a mechanic engineer, and um he still has that carburetor. He says I need to drive back to Minnesota so I can go, but he's holding on to it for me because I want to keep it. And yeah, that's I never thought that I was gonna like
That's
launch into
awesome.
some mechanic career. That I didn't realize that was a thing, and that I'd be obsessed with engines, but that's kind of what it turned into.
Amazing. Did you ever think there was something else that you wanted to do, or was it just kind of a natural path as you grew
Did
up?
I ever broke off after?
Sorry. Did you ever think about doing anything else when you grew up, or was this just did it just
Um,
fit and make sense as soon as you were aware of what you were
I
doing?
definitely considered like the fire service, and I got involved in, became a paramedic, firefighter when I came home from like shipping out commercially, because I was like, well, what do I do now? I guess I can pursue this. And it was fun, and it was a good experience. However, like I struggled to pay rent. I could hardly afford to live. Unless you're part of a big fire department, you ain't gonna make much money. But also like, and I think it plays on the same part of your brain that mechanics does. You are tasked with a problem. You've got to come up with a solution. You're out in the field. There's people looking at you for answers as a paramedic. Like same, the human body not that
Yeah.
different from an engine, other than if you like are grossly negligent, you can kill somebody. But that's true in the mechanic world too. So like, and it's So I
100%.
did consider like continuing. I really like being a paramedic. It was really fun. I thought about going the doctor route or nurse route, but at the time I had
Oh,
many
wow.
friends who did it, and they were like, it's not what you think. They were kind of burnt out, and they were like, seriously, go back to turning wrenches. That's what you went to college for. And it kind of plays on the same thing that you like. And I think I like the challenge of like having to figure out a solution to the problem, regardless of whatever it is. I think that is attracting me. And engines just happen to be something I'm really curious about. But I'm also, the human body is also a really interesting thing. So, I could have pursued that as well. But I didn't have the money for med school.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I love that. Well, I can totally relate to that. And I so agree with you. Like we're problem solvers, right? Like that's what it is. We solve problems and there's different ways to do that. And the human body is so similar to what we work on every day and vice versa. And it's all just different ways of diagnosing. So there's a lot of similarity there. But it costs a whole lot less money to become a mechanic because there's no licensing requirements.
Yeah. Yep.
So your parents aren't supportive of you living on a boat. Are they supportive of what you do professionally?
Sorry, you broke up again.
I'm cutting out again. I'm sorry. Do your parents support what you do? Have they been supportive of your career path?
Yeah, they have. At first, they were kind of like, is living in the car the greatest idea? And I was like, honestly, it's all I'm up with. And once they saw it work out, they're like, now we get it. We didn't like it because we're concerned for your safety, which I don't blame them. It is kind of sketchy. But they're absolutely like, wow, you are doing so much better not working for an employer, because they could tell I was really unhappy working for different mechanic shops. And I like the work, but, the typical female, they would find excuses to, like, get rid of you, or they didn't want to, like, work with you, or give you the shittiest jobs all the time, which just burn you out because they think you're incapable of doing more. And so my dad struggled probably the most, because, he's a business person. He's used to being in the office. And so he was very much, the typical millennial is told to go to college. You're not going to go be like somewhere. You're going to be like something high, like a doctor, an engineer, or something. And so like when I went to Mass Maritime to be an engineer, he was really proud. When I came home, he was not proud. He was like, what the hell are you going to do now? And I was like, I don't know, Dad. Like, I will figure it out, but I'm not going to become scum of the earth, promise. I'm going to try, but I'm going to also do what I want to do. And if I have to be creative to get there, I will figure it out, So now that things have kind of worked out and I'm no longer financially struggling, they're like, oh, we get it. You did do what you said you would do. It just took you a minute. And I was like, well, yeah, it's not like the way our economy is right now. It doesn't happen, overnight. And I don't know why Dad thought it would,
right.
So. Yeah.
Interesting. No, don't tell me.
So, but yeah, no, they're absolutely supportive, and they've been, just kind of watching from a distance, which is good.
All right. So you've worked in a couple of different areas. You've worked in automotive, you've worked on trucks, you've worked on boats. Do you see differences across the different areas as far as women are concerned?
So when I worked in automotive, I started out at the European Auto Shop, but there were no women there. I went to Pep Boys, which was kind of, the entry level. And the women that were there was one decent tech, but I think she had worked so hard to get to where she was, she would not listen to anybody. I mean, it was almost a negative, where she, like, there were some older job who were really helpful and they weren't mansplainers or anything, and she was shut down. She didn't want to listen. And it's like, God, you gotta, you know, they're not trying to belittle you, they're literally trying to help you. And so I saw a little of that. When I got to the truck industry, you know, most of us are kind of hardened by mansplaining. And so my supervisor at Cummins was actually a female. She was master Peterbilt tech. And then one of the power gen techs who worked on generators, she was, you know, she was really good at what she did. And we would work together. So I worked on like the stationary engine kind of truck side. And I'm physically strong, whereas she was a lot smaller than I was. And she couldn't like torque head bolts, but I could. But she was really good at other things that I couldn't do. So we would take turns to just help each other out where we weren't, you know, we kind of complimented each other. And that's kind of the way I just look at, you know, men and women. It's like, aren't we meant to kind of compliment each other? Like, I don't need to be the strongest, toughest person in the shop here. But if you're willing to help me do the lifting, you know, I'm willing to help you crawl in that tight space or something, you know, like, let's do it. Let's get it. You know? And so after the industry,
yeah.
I haven't,
Amen.
yeah, I haven't run across any female mechanics. I've run across some other like self-employed females who like do, like one of them does canvas and one of them did like boat detailing. And you know, but I haven't met anyone in the mechanical side yet. Not in Puget Sound, at least, not that I know of. So yeah, I think it depends on who you meet and how far they're into the field and whether they've kind of like become really hardened. I can say that, yeah, there's some men that I won't give you the time of day because every word out of your mouth is like not okay, you know. But there's a lot of people, you know, that want to learn and stuff like that. And like the recreational industry, there's very little of, you know, belittling or anything like that. Most customers are really wonderful. I don't see what I saw in the automotive field. Young techs, like, they're not trying. I remember at like Pep Boys, you get the young guys coming in and they thought they were like master techs of the universe, and then they would go like screw up a car, and it was hilarious. Here, there's a lot of money to screw up, you know, so like you should know what you're doing, and I don't see that arrogance, at least from more people.
Really?
I also don't have customers over my shoulder thinking I don't know what I'm doing. You know, like the customers on the boats hired me for a reason. They paid my travel, like they know of me, and they're excited to see me. And whereas at places like Pep Boys, some guy would bring a pickup truck in and he'd be like watching me do the brakes and thinking like, oh, I want a man doing my brakes. I want, you know, blah, blah, blah. You can do it. You know, like, okay, you can have a man. He's the kid, but, you know, you know.
Right. Do you feel the difference is because of business owner versus employee, right? When working for someone else, they didn't know necessarily the business, not necessarily. Now they know
not
you.
really. Just at like some of the automotive shops, I saw it. At the truck shops, very few drivers gave me a hard time. And the shop staff, like most of the older gentlemen shop stuck up for me if there was like a weird driver or a jerk in the talk to her, like that type thing. But yeah, like everyone I'll run across, like a customer who I don't think it has anything to do with being a female, but it's just like they're trying to be cheap, and so they're trying to like get part of their bill cut off, and they would do that to anyone. So it's like, God, you know, like that's why I raised my rates, and now I literally don't have any of that anymore. Once you raise your rates, then you get people who understand what your time is worth, and that's the end of that.
Hey, can you say that again? Shop owners out there.
I'm guilty of it too. I need to do it really bad. But yeah, it's like a light switch, man. You know, like I took forever. I think I started out at like 55 or 75 an hour. So, you know, like, yeah, because I was trying to get my foot in the door. And then it became very apparent that that attracts the cheapies, the cheap people who don't want to pay what you're worth, and then they want all this extra stuff done, and you're just like, wow, I'm like killing myself for like not a paycheck, you know, like. So the next year, most of my customers actually told me to raise my rates, and I said, well, yeah, like they were like, Meredith, you're worth more than that. A lot of people tip me, you know, like, so like I'll just, you know, they'll get a bill for like $100 or whatever, and they'll give me $200 because they're like, you should have raised your rate, so I'll pay it for you. And I'm like, holy crap, you know, like that's awesome, thank you, you know. And so like people understand your value when, you know, like, and I, you know, like,
are willing to pay for
it. Yeah, they're willing to pay for it. But you better back up with good service. Don't just raise your rates and do shitty work, you know, like, because you'll very quickly condemn yourself. But yeah, so like that's why I also haven't, you know, raised my rates to the max. You know, like I could be like what any diesel shop is, which is almost $300 an hour. But you know, I'm still $135 an hour, which is pretty cheap in the world of diesel techs. It's a little bit more expensive than boatyards, but it's not nearly as expensive as like Caterpillar. But I feel like if I raise my rate too much, then I better be right all the time, and I feel like I'm not there yet, you know. So that's why I've kind of, it's very slowly, like small increments, that type of thing, and you know.
Well, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you. Nobody is right all the time.
That's true. I just, you know, I want to make sure that I'm worth, you know, like whatever, you know, they're paying me, and hopefully they feel that, you know, like I'm a good investment. And it sounds like people, you know, think I'm a good investment because I'm still really busy. So I just, you know, the goal is to pay my bills and to be, you know, relatively comfortable. I don't need to be a millionaire. I don't think that's going to make me a happy person. You know, it'd be nice, but I don't need that at this point in my life. I just literally need to be able to function independently and enjoy what I'm doing.
Well, it sounds like you're doing both of those things.
Yep.
So cheers to you for that. Doing it your way, I love. I have to ask, what you're talking about with how you treated and the experience of being a woman in these different areas, seeing it worse on the automotive side. Thoughts why it's different there?
Why it's worse on the automotive side? Like I kind of heard some of that. Like you're breaking like half of your questions are coming through. So
I'm sorry.
I don't, you know, maybe price point is lower. Maybe it's the fact that it's everybody who owns a car versus like, you know, the people who own a boat. You know, more likely at a marina, you're going to run into retired couples, or people who have more money. You know, not all the time, that's not true, you know, like, but the average recreational boater is going to have that extra money to like fix their boat, hopefully. If not, they understand the value of doing it and they're willing to save up the money. And maybe that's why, they hire me, because maybe they want an electrical system upgraded or something, so they want outlets on their boat or something like that. Well, they're willing to pay for it because they don't want to do it. So it is what it is, and it costs what it costs. And either they have the money for it or they don't. It's not always a need. So, like for liveaboards, yeah, like it can be a need. But, for Johnny Sailor, who comes down to his boat once a month, like he can afford to save up the money for like a bigger project when he needs to, he's not going to like try to cheap out. And so, I imagine it's something related to that. Whereas most of us own cars, and, like our cars get driven all the time. They see much more use a lot of times than a boat. And, like it's just a much more commonly accessed thing. And so you get everybody, whether they're broke or not, like needing their car fixed at some point. And so, whereas like I don't see, the people who didn't have money to fix their boats, they're not going to be hiring me. They'll try to do it themselves, and that's fine. Like, go for it. And so, yeah, maybe that's why, like, that's my best guess, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because it struck me that you said that the truck side of things were friendly and supportive. And I guess it's kind of the same thing, right? A bit of a different customer base.
You said the truck side of things was like similar, like they were nicer on the truck side of things, yes. Probably because a lot of drivers don't own the truck, so it's not their money. It's the company paying to fix the truck, usually. The owner ops, they're picky about who works on their trucks. And, we had a couple regulars. Ironically, I had one guy who came in, his name Earl, and he drove the most classic Kenworth, red and white and chrome, and it was huge and beautiful. And I'm sure, like, I could barely reach the clutch in that truck, and he always wanted me to work on it, and he'd like bring it in with like some huge load on the trailer and then make me like test drive it with him. And like I have my CDL, but I'm no truck driver, like, and and so, but he decided, like, I guess he liked the shop, he liked the staff, and he liked me, even though I wasn't like a Kenworth person. If there was something I didn't know how to do, I was not him, and I was not afraid to ask for help. And I think he liked okay, she's not gonna like bullshit me and tell me she can do it when she really can't. And so he liked that, and there were certain things that I couldn't do, so I had to refer him elsewhere. But most stuff we either figured it out at the shop together, or I could do it, and it wasn't a problem. And it could be the same automotive. I ran into lots of wonderful customers. I just happened to see more negative customers at the automotive level than I did anywhere else.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that a lot from similar stories, so it's an interesting theme. Curious to hear people's theories on it.
Yeah.
I just looked up at the clock and I realized that we are almost done with our hour. The time went very quickly. I do have to apologize for folks who are saying my audio is really garbage on YouTube, and I know you're experiencing choppiness, so I apologize for that. Hopefully, you guys were still able to hear most of what we're talking about, because they had a lot of really great things to say, so hopefully you could hear. Before we sign off, I want to ask you one more question, if that's okay. If you had the opportunity to talk to the younger you, what is your
If I were to talk to the younger me,
yeah, or a young
I
girl
would
like you
say
who wants to do what you're
there's always a way to the end result. Yes, there are doors that close, my medical stuff, obviously, but that doesn't mean there's not some loophole around that to be able to work alongside. So I may not work on a ship, that was my dream job. I'd still be doing that if I could. But you know what? I'm the engineer who comes in my own business and comes in as a contractor and fix what the engineers can't fix now. So like there's other creative ways to get into the same thing that you thought, okay, that didn't work. What am I going to do now? So like I went to college for 7 years, including Central, but I never came out with a degree. I never finished the degree. I couldn't financially do it. And like us millennials are always told, you're going to fail if you don't have a degree. Well, good. I'm a college professor and I run my own business and I write, I haven't failed, and so there's loopholes everywhere. And if you're creative enough to like come up with a way to like work around whatever roadblock is in front of you, if you don't like working at a shop, start your own business. Like, screw working for the shop. If they're going to play games with you, then get creative and figure out something on your own. And you never know, it might turn into something like really successful. I don't know if I could ever go back to working for an employer. And now that I've been self-employed, suddenly all the dream jobs that I had applied for years ago are desperate for me and I can turn them down. Like I want to work for Caterpillar. Yeah,
Isn't that
to work
amazing?
for like Caterpillar so bad. They're like desperate. And I'm like, no, I ain't working for 16 an hour. Like, sorry. Like, you can pay me over 100 an hour if you want, but so get creative, because it's weird how the loopholes work, but they do work. There's always in like some strange, weird, you can like weasel your way in somehow, like you can still do it honestly. I'm not saying go print a fake degree or anything, but like there's another way of doing it, that you can like, okay, so I can't do it directly, but I can do something that's parallel to it, like I can literally be working in the same industry, doing the same things that I love. I just had to think of another way to do it. Would be my advice.
I 100% love that, and such a true like testament to your technical and your diagnostic brain. Like, there's more than one. Always is. There's always a solution. It's a testament to your. Oh, did we lose you?
I just dropped you.
Don't drop me.
Don't drop me.
It's a testament to
It's a testament to
like the technician brain that you
like
there's always
brain.
solution.
Like, there's always a solution.
You just have to find it.
Yeah, and there's a creative way around, whatever situation there is, and just because one shop says no, honestly, of that a lot, especially on like pages for the women mechanics. And at what point do you okay, you've got the basics, you've gone to school, you're qualified. At what point do you get creative and just kind of do your own thing? You don't have to start out with an expensive shop and stuff like that. Like, I just started renting a shop like 2 months ago. I could have never afforded a shop 4 years ago. And it's relatively low overhead to just do mobile. I mean, you still have to like have tools and stuff, but my overhead was so low that I could afford to like do stuff. And so you don't have to go take out loans. You don't have to like beg some shop that's gonna like treat you like crap. You know, like you can go out and change oil, and any opportunity to learn something new, you know, like take it. And the downside to it, which I'm noticing especially on my end, is I already feel like I'm becoming outdated, even as a college educator. I'm not a dealership anymore, you know, like, and I'm such a small company that like Kubota and Yanmar and like the big diesel companies, they won't send me to training because I'm not qualified to be a dealer through them. So like I didn't have access to that anymore. And that's like the one downside, where it's like, where can I get continuing education? I don't know. You know, and new technology, and they've gotten so proprietary, I can't even rent the software anymore. So they're working to push us out. And so I'm currently trying to figure out, you know, maybe my college can pay to send me someplace, because like obviously they want me up to date if I'm teaching engineering students. So maybe, you know, like it's another loophole thing. Like, okay, I can't be a dealer myself, but the school has a bigger footprint than I do. Will the school send me someplace to like stay on top of like what's going on in today's world? Because I feel like I'm only 31, but there's like young techs that don't know how to work on mechanical stuff anymore. Like, I'm old school, man. And, you know, like that's kind of scary, because it's like, holy crap, they like a new engine came out and I don't even know what half the electronics are anymore. And so
that's totally the challenge.
That's
yeah,
totally the
When
challenge.
you're independent.
When you're independent, keep up on the current stuff.
But you're going to find the loophole.
I feel like you're going to find that training, though, to find that training.
Like anything, let me know, because I'd fly across the country for some classes, or you know, like I would find a way to sign up for that type of stuff if there was something that I could go do.
I'll keep my ear out. I have faith that you'll
I'll keep
find
my
a way.
ear out. I have faith that you'll find a way, though.
Great.
You're not taking.
Yeah.
I want to respect your.
I want to respect your
Number
time.
I feel like we could talk for hours.
But our connection is horrible, and I feel horrible for everybody listening to my garbled audio. So I want to thank you for
saying yes to spending this hour.
To spending this hour.
I want to thank everybody who tuned in
to hang out with us
and to hear her story and
hear her story and hear what she's been up to.
Great attitude.
And great attitude.
Try to time for making this possible. And
this possible. And
all of
guys, know you can find all of my IG
TV tab. This one will also be there as well, so you can go back and hopefully the audio will be better in the recorded version.
Audio will be better in the recorded version. I appreciate all of you.
For your opportunity.
So grateful for your opportunity.
So grateful for you for hanging out with me. And we can talk more offline.
And we
can talk more offline. Keep up everything that you're doing.
Keep up everything that you're doing.
And everybody have a wonderful evening. Be good to yourself.
Be good to yourselves.
And we'll talk together.
Thanks for inviting me. That was fun. Bye.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.